Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So we are in the final week of the Modern Women's Health Summit. So we've had an incredible roundup of experts in nutrition and women's health talking about all different topics. And today's interview is going to be a really important one for a lot of women because we are talking about weight and finding your happy weight in a way that is really about your health. And so today I am joined by Danielle de la Valle. She's a certified nutritional therapy practitioner, an author, a public speaker, a nutrition education program writer, instructor, and food educator. She's a very busy lady. And Danielle works really hard to make everyone feel validated and supported through every aspect of their journey to health and wellness. So we're going to be talking about her book, Happy Weight. So this video is live. Please comment. Let us know that you're here. Say hello. Share and like this video. Share it out with your friends and participate with us throughout the video. I'll be kind of checking the comments, so we'll be able to see you if you have any comments or questions as we're going along. All right. Hi, Danielle. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. So thank you.
Yeah. So do you want to just start us off with kind of how you became interested in nutrition in the first place?
Yeah. So, when I was 19, I had a blood test done for food sensitivities. And that was kind of my first go round into understanding what it was like to see what inflammation in the body meant. I didn't really understand it at the time. I was still really young. I was in college. I kind of wanted to eat whatever I wanted, but I knew the foods that caused like an immediate reaction. So that was like my first toe into it. And then I kind of messed around with Chinese supplements and Chinese medicine a little bit. But it wasn't until my mid to late 20s when I decided to take the NTA program that I was like, into the whole world of functional medicine. Because before that, everyone thinks they know everything. I tried being a vegan. I did keto a really long time ago. And, but my motivations were always, in a specific area, which we'll talk about, of course, when we go more into this. But I'd gotten to the point with my health where I was just like really in the toilet at that point. My mental health was suffering. I was having heart palpitations. There was just a lot of issues going on. So the NTA program really kind of like saved my health, which was really awesome. And so, yeah, it kind of just, I don't know, like, I don't like to use the word addicted or obsessed, but I definitely after that was like, oh my gosh, I found my calling. So it was just, yeah, super fun. And it took me a while to get here, but I'm glad to be here now. So.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that once you learn all of this. And it's like the more you learn, the more you realize there is still so much more to learn. You really can just kind of go off the deep end of, we'll call it exploring.
Yes, I like that.
So we're going to be talking about your book, Happy Weight. When did you first feel called to have this conversation with women around their weight? Like, was that always part of your story, or was that something that you saw needed attention as you were working with people?
It was when I was working in the weight loss clinic, because I was raised in Southern California. So, restrictive eating was just a normal part of daily life. I didn't know there was anything wrong with it. I never made negative comments to women. That's not a part of my personality or my being, but, weight loss was always a common part of conversation. And it wasn't until I'm like in a clinical environment, medical weight loss clinic, seeing a ridiculous amount of women every single day, for 2 years straight. And I started to realize that it was just really destructive language that was being used. And so and it was through the body language. I would see women sweat. I would see how uncomfortable they were. I would see them draw in. And I was like, well, this isn't how people are supposed to be when they're talking about food. They're supposed to talk about passion and loving food and, nourishing from it. And it was so saddening to me that I started to kind of wake up. And that's when I started to have this internal change of how I wanted to see my narrative when I worked with women.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting that you could see the body language of like that relationship between food and the emotions that we have around it. So When someone goes to buy your book, the first thing they'll notice is that cover. It's a beautiful cover. And I wanted to ask you off the bat, what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, so I'm quite the nudist, and it's a part of my practice. Actually, it's something I cultivate when I do retreats with women, because I feel like when we put clothes on, we become very hyper aware of our body and our existence and the things that seem to not fit right. And so I feel like when women are in their, all of their glory, there's something that happens that's really beautiful. Their inhibitions fade away, the shame fades away, the guilt fades away. Any story that was ever told to them or they told themselves is completely it just disappears. It's a really beautiful thing to watch. And I encourage women who, are ever thinking about going to a retreat like that or being a part of it to see what it feels like, because it's really empowering. And so I wanted to capture that essence, that happiness of like what a woman really feels like when she's completely comfortable in her own skin. And those smiles were real. Those are my friends. They were in my backyard. And even though it was like freezing outside because it was fall. Oh yeah, it was so cold. It's like 8 a.m. because it's a natural light photographer, that I use. And so, but they were just so free and so happy. And so I don't know, I just needed something that was me. And even though it's actually been to my detriment because no one will advertise my book.
Because of the cover?
Yeah, because of the cover. But I don't care. The women that love it are going to be drawn to it, and then they're going to want to be a part of the message. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope we have created a little intrigue for everyone watching around what the cover of your book is, if they haven't seen it. I got it on Kindle, which I kind of wish I had gotten a physical one so I could hold it up. So
I'll send you one.
Link to oh, cool. Yeah, we'll link to your book so everyone can check it out and see the cover and then buy a copy because it's fantastic.
Thank you.
So you started off your book with kind of a history of women and beauty going back, all throughout history. Why was it important for you to kind of add in that context when talking about the modern woman?
I needed women to see that this wasn't a now problem, that this is an always problem. This is something, women have been, and I don't want to, it's not an us versus them conversation about men versus women, but unfortunately women have been categorized as a commodity, since the beginning of civilization. We were something that could be married off. We were, something that could be used for, elevation in society. And, prostitution is one of the oldest professions, in human history. And so if we really think about the ideals of what beauty actually is, it's something that has been cultivated since antiquity. And so I wanted people to know that this isn't, because that's what's happening in I see a lot of books about body positivity that are talking about diet culture. And it's not just diet culture, it's humanity. It's how we treat women. It's how the narrative is cascaded. It's how we actually construct our society. And so there's nothing wrong with wanting to dye your hair or get fake eyelashes, but just know, are you doing it for yourself or are you doing it for everybody else? And so I really wanted women to go into the book with this idea that this isn't just current. This has always been happening.
Mm-hmm. That's such an important context because that's why it runs so deep too. There's so much emotion and there's so much history there, not just, our history of this life, but our ancestors' history. And that's a lot to unpack. So I think that's great that you started off like that. So people know this is not just like a weekend's work. This is information for your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go down the road of epigenetics, you're trapping trauma from generations of women, right? So this is something that will take a time to unlearn for sure.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people haven't read your book yet. So they might be thinking it's called Happy Weight. So they might be thinking this conversation is going to be about weight loss. And it, kind of, but not really, but kind of. Do you want to tell us what happy weight really means? What does that phrase mean for you?
Yeah, so the weight that they're losing is actually the weight of all of the shame and the guilt they've been given their entire lives. And happy weight is just a state of consciousness, right? It's how we come into ourselves. It's how we're free. Of course, for those of you who do want to read it, we talk about boundaries and toxic relationships and really truly understanding what your body is and how it works. And there's a huge culture out there about intuitive eating. I think it has its place, but I also want women to know how to nourish their bodies. So I do talk about, that bio-individual aspect of nutrition. And so it's just really like, when can we feel our best self? When can we feel balance and peace? And so it's really just kind of that introductory, because it's not it's not a heavy book. It just is like a light conversation about, come on, let's start to love ourselves a little bit more. Let's give ourselves a little more credit. So you feel really empowered when you read it, and you feel like you're having a conversation with your best friend. That was the perspective as a writer that I wanted to cultivate, to the readers, is I want you to feel loved and comforted through the whole process, because this work is hard work. It brings up a lot of nasty stuff. And I didn't want anyone to feel any shame through that process. So, yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely feels like a conversation, like you're sitting in your living room with your best friends and you're all just talking about this. And your whole section about digestion is amazing. And I just, for everyone who has watched any of the other interviews in the Modern Woman Summit, digestion has come up in every single interview, and it is came up in the one about beliefs. It came up in this one about weight. Like, I just want to point out to everybody that is a continued theme in making sure that you feel well. So I had to point that out, since we were talking about, that there is that element in your book. So one of the ideas in your book, you tackle this pretty early on, the idea of switching from thinking about size, being focused on size, to being focused on health. Why is this so important for people to begin that switch?
Honestly, because we're in this kind of like size construct, right? Where people actually think that the determination of health isn't a number. And that's the part that's really frustrating. There's just like this fat phobic society, but what we don't realize is standing on a scale doesn't tell you anything about your body.
Yeah.
If you have actual tests done and you're working with practitioners that tell you, oh, okay, we have genetic polymorphisms, or we actually have bacterial infections, or, we do have, some deficiencies, that is a real gauge of your health, not the scale. And so I do not like it when clients have a scale in their home. It's very destructive. It's not a good tool to be using, because it does, every time you step on that scale and you see a number you don't like, it ruins everything. It can ruin months of progress in your health. It can ruin relationships you have with other people, because you don't realize you start to internalize insecurity. You're going to project that to other people. It transforms and transmutates into every aspect of your life. And so this weight idea is so deconstructive when we're trying to talk about being healthy in our society, or being healthful in our society. And I'm still seeing it in the nutrition community with orthorexia and restrictive eating and this control mechanism. And it's just really frustrating, because people are trying to heal, but they still keep going back to these very specific ideals that I need to look a certain way to be healthy. So I really try to tell people, like, I am in the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life right now. And my body is not the same as it used to be. And I love it, and that's the thing is when you think about size, it just really can derail everything that you're trying to work for.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the scale. What are some other roadblocks that women run into when they're beginning this work of trying to stop focusing on their size and start focusing on their health? Are there other kind of everyday roadblocks that you see people running into that make this progress harder?
It can be almost everything. It can be their morning routine. You know, it could be the type of coffee that they purchase when they go through the line that triggers them. It could be an article of clothing that they see in their closet that reminds them of something. We have so much emotional attachment to so many different things in every aspect of our life. And until we start to change the narrative in our head, and then sometimes we have to change physical surroundings in order to kind of create new memories. Because anything can be a trigger. And if we have those, we have to either learn to heal it if it's in our direct environment, or we have to change it because there's really no other way around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes back to this being a lifelong work of deconstructing all of this. So you have an amazing quote in your book. I'm just going to read it. True vulnerability is the act of asking for what you want, regardless of what others think. I love that. I'm going to needle point it on something. How does that concept tie into weight and kind of the overall society's view of weight?
I mean, honestly, women never ask for what they want. They don't. They're always so afraid of what other people think. They're always so afraid to be heard or to be listened to or to ask for something that means something to them. And I mean, I was just at a retreat, women's empowerment retreat this weekend. And so many women were saying, I'm sorry, or they were refusing compliments, or they were so afraid to say that they were unhappy in their lives. And so it's just, when I start to see people take that action, and it's not pride, it's not narcissism, it's not selfish to take care of yourself. So asking for anything, saying, I don't want to work in my job anymore. Maybe I don't want to be married to this person anymore. Maybe I need to take time away from my family and my friends. Asking for the things that you need the most in life and the things that you want most in life to achieve. We have to have that really vulnerable, raw, broken moment to say, I am unhappy and I need to change and I need to make a change. And once we do that, we can feel really free. We can feel free from things that have been holding us back for years, that have been getting in the way of who we really are, people that silence our voice. It's really interesting to watch society in America and, how easily people will jump on top of you if you say something they don't like. They try and silence you, and being vulnerable in that moment and being able to be confident enough to say, oh, I don't like what you just said. That's really offensive. You hurt my feelings. That even is asking for something that you need and standing up for yourself. And so I just really try to encourage women to let's break ourselves down to our rawest space to see what we really need in this life. And then try and gain confidence in that, because once we find our truth, then we can start to work through everything and we can start to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once you find your truth, and you kind of have to get through to the other side to know what that truth is, to see the contrast. And there was in your book, there was a pretty stark contrast between when you were talking about your friends in California and the conversations they were having, and your friends in Norway when you were there for a year, which that sounds amazing.
It was.
And yeah, you kind of have to go through the contrast to even see what your truth is, to know that what you're currently living might not be your truth. Do you want to talk to us about that contrast that you experienced, and just the fat shaming, body shaming, kind of, why it's so important to change the way we talk to each other and how that plays in everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of like what I said before about how I didn't even know what I was saying was wrong. Before I worked in the weight loss clinic, we don't know things can be different. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why we don't change. That's why we're so afraid of change, because we don't know how it'll be received. We don't know what's going to happen to us on the other side, because if everybody else isn't doing it, what's going to happen to us, Yeah. And so that's hard. It's the hardest part, is that this fear-based mentality is going on. And so for me, it was really interesting. I didn't know what was happening at the time when I lived in Norway. I'm 16 years old. it took me a decade to start to like understand what had really happened to me. But to live in a space where women encouraged me to love my body, encouraged to push me to different levels of being my true self, to push me to come into my voice. Because I was a very timid person before I moved there. I didn't speak. I couldn't ask for what I wanted. I felt very ashamed if I needed anything. You know, I was definitely a doormat, like straight up 100%. And the things that my girlfriends in California used to say to me, which I now that we're talking these days about like, you know, being bullied and triggers and that type of stuff. I didn't realize I was being bullied by some of the friends I had, you know, in California and the things that they said. And so it's really fascinating to see this, like this specific narrative that you're raised with, and then you move to another place and it's completely different and completely encouraging. And so what I try to do now is to help to tell women that it can be completely different. And what we have to do is the buck has to stop with us, right? And so if we want to end up kind of like infiltrating our communities, we have to be the police of our own conversations. So we can't say nasty things to ourselves. We have to really stop saying nasty things about other women and just like really come at a place of love. And even though it's really uncomfortable to get called out on your stuff, it needs to happen sometimes. You know, if someone's saying something that's really bad about another person, you need to say, wait a second, that is a human being you are talking about. That is not appropriate. And if that starts to change you as a person, and then you realize maybe your friends suck and you need new friends, then maybe that's you might realize that. And so that's why I talk about toxic relationships too, and removing them. But yeah, that's the thing is like if what we say makes us feel bad and it makes other people feel bad, then what we're doing is not right. And that's an opportunity for us to see that there can be a change there. And so, because that's hard when you're talking to women for the first time about change, they're like, how do I know that I need to change? And it's like, well, if it doesn't feel good, if you wake up in the morning and something makes you unhappy or sad or doesn't make you feel complete joy, then it's not right.
I love all of that. Another thing that stood out to me in that section of your book was, and I feel like this is helpful when women are trying to think of, well, what else do you say? Because I think we sometimes get stuck in habits of having conversations with each other. Like I've definitely noticed certain people enjoy gossiping, and you can kind of get into the habit of that. And so trying to figure out, well, what else do you say? You were talking when you were in Norway about that your friends there were challenging you about academics and learning things and trying things and having experiences, and just switching the conversation away from how someone looks towards, you know, what people are doing and trying to do and how you can support that is a great way to just change that conversation with people, you know, in your daily life. And it's a hard habit to develop. I try to do this like with my little cousins and nieces, not complimenting on them on how cute they are, but on what they're doing or what they're creating or something, you know, of substance that they have control over, because we really don't have control over the way we look.
Absolutely. I mean, when you see someone for the first time, don't necessarily comment on how good they look. Just say, wow, you look so happy, or that thing you did last week was so amazing. I'm so proud of you. You know, really actually placating to the things that mean something in someone's life, not something that's completely, you know, vain. Like, why do we need to comment on vanity when all of us are out here existing, doing really great things, being a great friend, being a great daughter, mother, sister, woman, you know, waking up every day and deciding to be a good person, you know, complimenting that instead of, you know, something that is so arbitrary and really, I mean, when you're on your deathbed, isn't going to mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it just reframes, you know, what's important in people's lives.
Exactly.
So I'd love to talk about the weight loss industry because you have a great story in there. You mentioned some specific techniques that some clinics use to kind of hook women on the idea that they need to lose weight. Um, are there any certain red flags that you can kind of point out to the people watching of, what to watch out for in advertising that can kind of tip us off about a company might be, trying to manipulate our emotions in their advertising to get us to think that we need to lose weight or look a certain way. And the solution, of course, is their product that we can buy.
It's going to be a majority of the health and wellness and fitness industry, unfortunately. A lot of the language that they're using is to try to brainwash you, reprogram you, and make you believe that the only way to achieve true happiness in your life is if you look this way. And so if anyone is talking about selling you weight loss or, selling you something that's not real, these are really, they've been using these techniques since, when did diet culture really specifically start? It was around the 50s. And, we could really go into it, but more or less it was, you're the perfect woman if this, right? And so this is the thing, is we're trying to achieve this ideal of perfect. And so specifically for us in the weight loss clinic, we use neurolingual processing, which is a really dangerous form of kind of like subliminal programming. And so we would use posturing, would use tones. It would make the person seem like they were compassionate, like they really believed in you, that they wanted you to reach this goal. But what they were trying to do is gain your trust so that they could sell you more product. Because at the end of the day, a majority of the weight loss industry is a sales-based industry. So they're looking, they have quotas. We had quotas, we had quotas we had to meet, or else we could get fired. We were weighed and measured every month. We had a specific dress code we had to wear. So this is the thing, is even if, and I'm not going to name any companies because clearly I don't want to get into any trouble, but any sort of weight loss industry, any sort of or company or any sort of weight loss, food company, anyone that's trying to sell you weight loss you're just a dollar amount to them. You mean absolutely nothing to them. And I don't care what kind of bond you had with them. You literally are fueling their bank account, because that's how the entire industry works. So I think the only safe things that are left in the wellness industry are people that are like, do you want to feel good? Because that is the case. We do live in a chronically ill society. So, do you want to feel good? Do you want to achieve optimal health? Do you want to get off your medications? Do you want to try and get your tests, back to optimal range? Mm-hmm. Those are the only people that I would really want to trust. Anyone who's shaming you or guilting you or going to trigger you to make you feel bad about your body or the eating styles that you have, those are not people you want to be around. You need to be, working with people who are going to let you be a human being and not tell you to restrict your food during the holidays. That's the thing, is like, we are humans, we need balance. And so, yeah, in a roundabout way, just like I said earlier, if it doesn't make you feel good, it's not right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And feeling good, brings it back to your health instead of your size. It's not about the shape of your body. It's about, how does your body feel? What is your body doing? What's the function? What do your lab tests feel like? Because I know plenty of people that are super skinny and not healthy.
Oh, I could name a laundry list of people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is size is not a measure of our health. And I can't tell people that enough. And I really try. But then some people still need to do more work beyond happy weight, unfortunately, because if we have a disordered relationship with food, we have a disordered relationship with ourselves. And so that's a mental health issue that we need to continue to pursue. But for the most part, these bodies are just temples, they're meat puppets, and we need to nourish them and not treat them like garbage. So.
Absolutely. So what are some techniques or some therapies you can recommend to women who are having trouble changing their diet because of the emotional ties to food? And, of course, someone with disordered eating needs some very professional help. And I'm sure there's a range of people, with an emotional tie. Do you want to kind of give people an idea of where they can look for some help if that is coming up as a roadblock for them?
Absolutely. There are plenty of people who work with eating disorders, specifically if that's what it is. If it is disordered eating, I highly recommend someone who is a health at every size coach. They talk about restrictive eating or binge eating disorder. It's Linda Bacon's work. She's a world-renowned registered dietitian that wrote Health at Every Size. It's a great book for people who are really struggling with their food issues. But specifically, my philosophy is to remove yourself from like food-based activities, try to do things with friends that will help to build your confidence, do things that are going to make you feel good about yourself, your life, your passions. And more or less, if it's food, then we need to go on a food journey and try to discover what that means. Where are the emotions that are coming up with this food? And that can lead to something else. And trying to find your food freedom, whatever that means. That's the thing is like, for me, I'm still a practitioner. So I needed to keep happy weight within a specific line of understanding for any woman who may have never understood that she has genetic mutation or chronic illness. I didn't specifically want to talk just about disordered eating because I wanted to make sure that, we're 95% chronically ill in the United States. So, I wanted to make sure that if someone read Happy Weight that has like Lyme bacterial infection, they see me talking about Dr. Wall's in the book and then might discover it and go on, her own specific journey. So for me, I've dealt with restrictive eating in the past and it was really tough, but it was always because of a destructive relationship that I had with another person. So either it was someone I was dating, it was my direct environment, it was people I was being influenced by. So, and I've seen that a lot. If people still have a destructive relationship with food, it's because of something that is triggering them and influencing them. So until we can work through that, we have to remove it from our lives. And it's sad for me to say, but people that are in the wellness industry, if they're struggling with their food, it might be time for them to take a leave, and go on to something else that's going to cause, this reawakening of passion and desire for life. Because if you're working in the food, working in nutrition and we have a disordered relationship, it's time to walk away because anything, even if you feel like it defines you, it can be something that negates your growth and your healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it comes back to how does it make you feel? Mm-hmm. If it's stressing you out, it's not helping anybody.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah. So where can people find your book and where can they connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, so I'm on Amazon, which is awesome. So you can buy the print book, you can buy Kindle. I have an audio book, and I'm actually launching a 12-week course in February. So I'm super excited where I'm going to go really deep into all of these things, which will be really nice. And so you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. So Danielle Della Valle NTP. And check me out, all the places.
Yay. Awesome. And I will, I'll edit this post afterwards and add in your URLs and all of your links so that people can connect with you easily. And we'll link to your book and to the other book that you mentioned, just as a reference for people who do need help with the emotional eating or disordered eating. And so before I let you go, since Halloween is coming up and it's all candy and sugar and everything we're trying to help people avoid and find healthy alternatives too, so you can still have fun. Do you have a tip that you can leave with our audience to help them have a healthier Halloween this year?
And there's a couple of things. So instead of giving kids candy, you can give them toys. Especially the Teal Project is really big. A lot of people don't necessarily know about it. So it's for children who might have behavioral disorders or children that have food sensitivities. So you could check out the Teal Project. That's really awesome. And also making food-based Halloween things for the kids. If you don't, it depends on what neighborhood you live in and like how you know the kids or anything like that. Because I know some parents won't let their kids, receive food that's not in a package. If that's the case, there's plenty of real food organic candy companies out there that are doing an incredible job and using, like beet sugar and dates and honey and that type of stuff. Or if you're having a party, just make some real food, fun, scary things, because it doesn't all have to be about high fructose corn syrup and processed food. So yeah, a few different options. I love Halloween. I'm just so excited.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great. Those are great tips. And yeah, there's plenty of healthy, delicious food that can be, a treat and be appropriate for a Halloween party that's not full of, who knows what. Exactly.
You could put charcoal in your kombucha and say that it's black magic drink or something,
I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. I love that. Ooh. Oh. All right. I'm gonna put it on my list. All right. Well, thank you so much for this interview. This has been really fun to I loved your book. Everything about it was fantastic. So it was a lot of fun to get to kind of hear some of this from yourself, in your own voice as well. So I highly recommend anyone watching go pick up a copy of Happy Weight. It's a fantastic book. It's also a great book to give to people for any practitioners who are watching. It has a great section about your body and bioindividuality and digestion, but it's not it's very accessible for really anyone who picked up this book would be able to understand and get the concepts that you're teaching. So kudos on that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thanks everybody for watching. So we will be back with a couple more interviews this week. We are talking with Lydia Joy tomorrow about minerals and your adrenals and thyroid, supporting that. And we have another interview coming up afterwards where we're going to be talking about supporting your gut health with Cynthia Thurlow and using your gut health to support your hormones. Sorry, I had a small brain malfunction. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.